Hello, I'm the real life fake wizard. Somewhere right now, a 38-year-old man is crying on his couch. He just finished a 3-hour video game about teenagers shoplifting and getting drunk in a parking lot, and he thinks he had some kind of spiritual experience. He might take to Twitter to post about his experience. He'll use words like masterpiece and nostalgia and my childhood. And for this experience, he would have paid $20 to buy it or subscribe to Game Pass. And either way, he might tell you this is the best game of the year. The game is called Mixtape. Developed by an Australian-based studio and published by Annapurna, this game has received perfect 10 out of 10 scores from major outlets. OpenCritic has it at 94% at the time of recording this, recommended by 97% of critics. In Mixtape, 3 teenagers in Northern California in 1999 will drive around, shoplift, trespass, drink underage, vandalize a house with toilet paper, and arrive at a party. In the climax, one of the teenagers threatens her police officer father with arson to avoid being grounded. The game frames this as her moment of triumph. Critics called it a standout performance. The game, in its entirety, is only 3 hours long, and from this, 38 and 42-year-old men are sobbing all over the West. Mixtape is like some kind of test for the gaming public. You either love it like it's the greatest game of the year, or you're puzzled that these people are falling for this crap. It is a $20 emotional manipulation device that exploits a generation's refusal to reckon with the distance between who they were and who they became. The critical establishment that crowned it is comprised of access economy incentives, demographic targeting, and the Annapurna brand halo. The characters the audience is weeping over are narcissistic, self-righteous, and, in the case of the game's emotional centerpiece, willing to threaten domestic terrorism to avoid accountability. Mixtape is nostalgia for failures. Hey, now hang on there. Before we continue, big announcement. We have a brand new home for all of our live streams, Fake Wizards Live. All our streams are moving to this new channel, effective right now. So if you've been catching us live on this channel, go over there instead. The Real Life Fake Wizard will exclusively be videos from here on out. So that's 3 shows a week, all on Fake Wizards Live. The link is below in the description and in the comments too. Come on over and subscribe so you don't miss us going live. We'll see you there. You play as Stacy Rockford, an aspiring music supervisor on her last night in this fictional small town before she leaves for New York. Through the game, you'll hang out with her 2 friends, Slater, a stereotypical stoner, and Cassandra, the rebellious daughter of a police officer. Together, the 3 of them skateboard through town, visit each other's bedrooms, rummage through closets, trash Blockbuster, and search for hidden alcohol stashes. Truly riveting activities. Along the way, there will be melodramatic petty conflicts with ups and downs, eventually leading to the trio throwing their own final party at a secret cabin in the woods. As the player, you will engage in gameplay such as skipping stones, taking photos, dodging cars, and swapping spit. Gross. The interactivity, where it exists at all, exists in the same register as a QuickTime event in a cutscene. There are no puzzles. There are no choices that affect outcomes. There is no system the player can learn, exploit, or master. There are no fail states. You cannot lose. If you miss a QuickTime button timing, the character completes the action anyway most of the time. The Review Geek identified this as well. Mixtape mistakes interaction for interactivity. The player is enrolled in someone else's mood and given just enough button prompts to feel implicated in the experience without ever being responsible for it. I joked while playing the game that I was surprised the game shipped without a auto walk button. The game already does almost everything for the player. One more design step and it would play itself, which would be honest, because what the game wants from the player is not engagement, but witness. So how did this, a 3-hour interactive film with no fail states and no meaningful player agency, receive perfect scores and enter the Game of the Year conversation? Well, that's easy. It's because everyone is compromised. The critical consensus around Mixtape cannot be trusted because of 3 possible comprised positions. Beneath the Annapurna brand sits the access economy. Outlets that want early review codes for the next Annapurna release cannot afford to be the outlet that pans this one. There's also the extravagant gift boxes for Mixtape we keep seeing popping up. They are very expensive and very exclusive. Do you want to keep getting these gift boxes? It'll cost you your integrity. Then there's the Microsoft Access angle. Mixtape launched as a day one Game Pass game in a time when Xbox desperately needs positive word of mouth and motivation for gamers to enter the Xbox apparatus. Every Xbox adjacent outlet has direct economic reasons to want their subscribers feeling good about what is on Game Pass, especially with consideration for the new stewardship of Xbox. And beneath the platform money sits the deepest problem, which is a demographic capture. The people writing about Mixtape are roughly the same age and cultural formation as the people who made it. They are reviewing a product that was designed for them by their peers, and they cannot see it from the outside because there is no outside. When a reviewer says a product was made just for me and then assigns it a 10 out of 10, the review has ceased to be a criticism, and instead, it's as if you signed a thank you note. The characters in Mixtape are revealing in a way the game does not appear to understand. Together, they are the game's framing of a sensitive coming-of-age story about the last night of high school. What they actually are is hard to look at. Rockford is a contemptuous narcissist who treats every person in her life as either an obstacle or a fool. She is convinced of her own depth on the basis of her musical taste. Rockford's central crisis is that her carefully curated final night isn't going the way she planned. Cassandra is the rebel standing against her father who genuinely just wants what's best for her, and in a grand act of teenage defiance, which also happens to be the scene that most reviewers are citing as cathartic and transcendent, occurs when the cabin she and her friends have just set on fire is burning behind her, and her police officer father arrives, and she yells at him.
I want you to understand, this ain't a catastrophe, it's a warning. Daddy, if you trap me here, this will only be the beginnings of my wicked ways. 'Cause I'm angry and I'm wired and I'm fixing for a whole lot of trouble. If you make me stay here, I'm gonna burn the whole place down.
This is a literal threat of escalating terrorism delivered to a police officer while the result of her previous arson burns behind her. Now, I'm no detective here. I'm just a fake wizard. But all of that is extremely suspect. How does the police officer father handle this threat from a criminal, you might ask?
There'll be patrol cars up and down this road. Get out of here. Go on. Back the way you came.
And?
Well, I guess we have ourselves an understanding.
The gaming press has called this a teenage girl finding her voice, threatening her father, a cop, with arson, standing in front of arson. He caves and lets her run away. These characters are not profound, nor are they real. They are tantrums by privileged children, both inside the game itself, and the writers with keyboards that wrote this trite, refusing to ever let any of the 3 experience genuine consequences for terrible choices. There are moments when Rockford and Cassandra could and should be reality checked by an adult, like burning down a cabin in the woods, which could pivot the story into something more honest, but the game walks back every opportunity. Mixtape is a game about American high schoolers in the 1990s, made by adults from Australia who look back at the cringe of their high school days and say, yeah, I had it all figured out then too. Who yearns for these people? The question now becomes, if these are the characters, what does it reveal about the people who weep over them? Shack News told you who they are. Quote, perfectly executed coming-of-age stereotypes that immediately remind you of someone you knew growing up, or maybe even yourself. If you see yourself in Rockford. You see yourself as someone who dismisses people based on their media consumption and describes her friendships as instruments of control. If you see yourself in Cassandra, you see yourself as someone who threatened her own father to get what she wanted, and they call it empowerment. If you see yourself in Slater, you see yourself as someone who replaces ambition with affability and calls it a lifestyle. The game asks you to love these people. The question is what that love says about the person doing the loving. Right now, there are critics, shills, journalists, everyone in the gaming press marketing apparatus weeping online over the idea that this game is allowing them to relive their teenage years again. That this game is a 10 out of 10 because it made me feel nostalgia. This is a lie, whether they know it or not. Game Informer's reviewer and many others wrote in praise that Mixtape makes me nostalgic for a life I never lived. That's right, you didn't live this. This isn't your life. VGC's reviewer went further, noting that they didn't grow up in America and the game still produced very real feelings of longing for its fictional small town. There's actually a word for this, and it's not nostalgia. The term was coined in 2012 by American writer John Koenig. Anemoia is defined as nostalgia for a time you've never known. The crucial distinction is that anemoia is built on imagination and not a real experience. It is longing for a projection for what you believe a past era felt like based on things like media, photographs, and cultural artifacts. BBC Science Focus has connected anemoia to the mechanics of populist political movements, noting that young voters susceptible to nostalgia-based messaging are often experiencing anemoia, a rose-tinted yearning for a past they never lived through, amplified by dissatisfaction with present circumstances. This is the same psychological mechanic that makes someone receptive to the phrase, "I was born in the wrong generation." No, you weren't. You really want to go back to no air conditioning, you dunce? Well, it's the same mentality of someone who is receptive to Mixtape. Both ideals sell a return to a past that only ever existed as a feeling. Simon Cardy's 10 out of 10 review contains what amounts to a signed confession. He writes, "I was born too late to be a teenager in the 90s. I grew up thousands of miles away from the schools of Northern California. I've barely stepped on a skateboard outside of a few scraped knees in the summer of 2003, but none of that matters, and Mixtape knows this." He then writes, "True nostalgia isn't the replication of a specific place or time, but of a feeling. This is anemoia described in real time by a man who doesn't know the word. He is telling you that the game induced a longing for a time he never experienced, in a place he never visited, among people he never knew, and he scored it 10 out of 10 because it did that." He's evaluating the effectiveness of an emotional manipulation and praising the manipulators for hitting him precisely where he's weakest. He was transported to a version of his past that Mixtape constructed for him. It's a past filtered through someone else's music, someone else's cultural references, and someone else's imagined California. These men are crying over memories they never made in response to characters who would despise them. The people yearning for Mixtape's version of the 1990s are the same people who inherited a counterculture and pawned it for stock options. Mixtape's cast of characters are depicted as teenagers but have the mindset and dialogue of 40-year-old also-ran intellectuals. They think they have the world all figured out and that they're going to best adulthood because they're smarter than everyone else. In real life, this was the decade, the 90s, that was still saying fight the man and produced a culture including Rage Against the Machine, and also produced the generation that grew up to become the machine's middle management. "Don't be evil" was Google's founding motto, a statement of counterculture values embedded in the DNA of a startup born in a garage. Google quietly retired the motto in 2015. By then, the company had become one of the largest surveillance apparatus in human history, and the generation that grew up on Rage Against the Machine t-shirts was designing its user interfaces. "Think different" was Apple's slogan, borrowed from the counterculture and used to sell the most conformist consumer product on the planet. The aesthetic of rebellion was absorbed into corporate branding with surgical precision. The hoodie-wearing CEO, the open plan office designed to look like a garage, Spotify playlists curated to simulate the discovery experience that killed the record store. Every signifier of 90s anti-establishment energy was strip-mined and repurposed as a branding exercise. And the generation that thought it was so self-righteously smart about power structures built the power structures that now dominate every aspect of your daily life. Or they became the cogs in those structures. Or they simply consumed the product those structures produced. These access media shills who are weeping over Mixtape checked their iPhones afterward. They drive to Starbucks. They donate to causes via apps owned by conglomerates. They post their nostalgia on platforms that monetize their emotional data. They are the consumers who allowed megacorporations to colonize every corner of public life. And they did it while wearing vintage band t-shirts and doing Chungus TikToks. These overly emotional millennials sobbing over Mixtape are the same people who sold out the world they claim to understand. And now they want to go back to the moment before they signed the contract. That's what Mixtape offers. A return to the last instant you could pretend you were going to be different. This game's characters don't actually rebel against anything, though they say they are. Their rebellion has no political content, no ideological framework, no target beyond personal convenience. Cassandra confronts her father's curfew. Rockford vandalizes a principal's house because he gave her detention. They shoplift. They throw toilet paper. They get drunk in a parking lot. Skate, party, avoid the law, hang out, sneak out, make out. That is the full extent of its moral universe. Rebellion as aesthetic, purposeless, consequence-free, and marketable. The people who identify with these characters aren't nostalgic for rebellion. They're nostalgic for the costume of rebellion, the version that requires nothing and costs nothing, which is, once again, exactly what the game delivers. A 3-hour simulation of transgression that's just long enough to make sure you're past the return policy window on Steam. Mixtape's critical reception reflects a compromised press corps, seduced by the Annapurna halo, incentivized by the gaming press ecosystem, primed by the elaborate press kits, and targeted with demographic precision by a product designed to appeal to the exact people evaluating it. Its emotional responses are licensed from real artists and deployed as a substitute for earned narrative weight. Its design philosophy eliminates consequences, creating a fantasy of rebellion that costs nothing, risks nothing, and means nothing. And the audience that is embracing it, the whole 12 of them, are the adults sweeping on their couches, posting about how it just hit different, is the same audience that grew up on anti-establishment anthems and then became the establishment. The same audience that wanted to fight the machine and became the machine's supply chain. They are mourning a version of themselves that never existed in a decade, that never felt the way the game says it did, in response to characters who would have found them contemptible. But here is something that is missed, and something I hope lights a fire in you if you made it to this point in the video. You are seeing this. You are still here. You are alive in a world that demands more of you than just yearning. Yearning for the past is pathetic. When you have the ability to fight for your life today, like right now, you are older than the teenager you're mourning, and you are better equipped than that teenager ever was. You have failed at things that teenager couldn't have imagined attempting. Every hour you spend mourning a fictionalized version of your youth, or even your real youth itself, is an hour stolen from the person you could still become. The 90s don't need you to go back. The 90s needed you to take what you learned, the music, the friendships, the pain and discovery, and build something with it. Right now, today, is better than yesterday. Knowledge is more accessible right now than ever before. You have tools, you have skills and perspectives that any version of your past self could only have dreamed of. Use them. Forgo your past. Fight for your tomorrow. Looking backwards just hurts your neck. Until next time, create, innovate, inspire others to do so as well, and for the love of God, cancel Disney Plus. Bye-bye.